One of the fascinations about the cinema is that the lights went down. You were in the dark. It's very private. And I used to turn around and look at that beam going through the tobacco smoke. And it still holds a kind of fascination for me. I don't know why. It's part of the magic show, I think. And that beam showed me places I thought I'd never visit. I've been terribly lucky and I have visited them. It showed me characters. I met all sorts of people, i.e. the characters on the screen, that I'd never meet in my ordinary, dull, suburban life.
I really must go home.
Please, sir, I want some more.
What? 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 Ask for more?
OK, cut it. Stop the train there. No one running on the top floor. How was that? Very good.
For 40 years, David Lean's been regarded as one of the most brilliant large-scale filmmakers in the world. The man who made Doctor Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, and Bridge on the River Kwai is the only British director to have had such spectacular success in a world dominated by Americans. He has the reputation of being one of the toughest and most perfectionist directors in the business.
You see what I mean? Mum's up there. Mum's up there, and we end here, and then she steps in, and in she comes here.
Can't believe it.
That's right.
Now, at the age of 76, Lean's on location again, making a film from E.M. Forster's classic novel, A Passage to India. It tells what happens to two English women on a trip to India in the 1920s. Adela, played by Judy Davis, has come out to see her fiancé Ronnie, played by Nigel Havers. She's accompanied on the trip by Ronnie's mother, Mrs. Moore, played by Peggy Ashcroft. Their visit is to prove catastrophic.
Cut! Good. Very good indeed. That seemed good to you, too? Yes. Which you like best? We'll print both, but... Oh, well, if it's as near as that, I'm sure they're both really good. All right, now, chaps, before the sun goes off it, we're doing a long shot by a train coming into the station. Right, run up! Run up! 674, take one.
Lean's films have won 26 Oscars, but he hasn't made a film for 14 years. This is the story of his life's work and his daring return to the screen after most people thought he'd made his last film. David Lean was born in 1908, the son of a London accountant. The commuter town of Croydon, where he grew up, was classic Edwardian suburbia. Even as a boy, it seemed to Lean to be a grey, dreary place. He couldn't wait to escape. After 30 years of living in some of the world's most exotic places, Lean has recently returned to London to live in two huge converted warehouses in the heart of London's docklands.
You know, the funny thing is I can hardly remember my early life. I remember we lived at a place called Merstham when I was very young. Very nice. And we moved to Croydon. And it seems very soon after that, my father left my mother. And I have a kind of psychological block. I can't remember anything. I remember when I was 17, 18, had a happy school life. Otherwise, I'm rather blank. Freud, page 1.
Lean's mother was left to look after him and his younger brother, Tanguy. The divorce was all the more traumatic because the family were devout Quakers. The marriage had brought together two very different traditions, art and technology. His father came from a line of academics and painters, his mother from a Cornish family of inventors and engineers.
When my father was still with us, we lived in a big house in Croydon, and we had a woman what does called Mrs. Edgerton, who I've never forgotten. Before I could go to the cinema, she, an avid cinema goer, told me about them. And she loved Charlie Chaplin. And she used to imitate Charlie Chaplin for me, round the kitchen table, skids and all. And I said, but I would sit there roaring with laughter as she skidded round the table, unknown to anybody in the house. My mother, I think, would have been horrified.
In 1921, Lean left home for boarding school, Leighton Park, a Quaker school near Reading. Academically, he was always overshadowed by his younger brother. It was to give him a lifelong feeling of inferiority about intellectuals. An early school report said that David displayed no particular aptitude for anything. and had no suggestions to make about a future occupation.
I was a complete dud at school. I was hopeless at Latin. They asked me to give it up, in fact. I couldn't give up mathematics. I was hopeless at that.
But by the time his father took this picture on a trip to Switzerland, something had happened which changed Lean's life.
An uncle of mine gave me a box Brownie camera. And everybody said, but he'd never be able to take photographs. And I found it the biggest compliment I'd ever been paid. It was box black like this. I remember it very well. And I went out and I started to take pictures. And they came out. And it became my great friend. I found myself rather good at it.
Photography wasn't the only thing that was starting to capture the boy's imagination. At last, he was allowed to go to the cinema.
Going to the cinema opened up whole new worlds to me, as indeed it did, of course, thousands of people. I think it was in contrast to those dreary suburbs. I just loved movies because they took me to places that I never thought I'd see in my life. And after a bit, I realized there was somebody behind the camera. And I remember King Vidor. He did a film called The Big Parade. There was a man called John Gilbert and a girl called Renia Dore. And they were saying goodbye to each other. And there were close-ups of her with moving, people moving, troops moving all the time. So it was a static figure against this flow of soldiers. And I thought, God, that's marvelous, tremendous sense of movement. I never forgot it. I copied it almost exactly in Zhivago. When Lara is looking for someone, that's where she meets Zhivago. And I had people walking against one single figure. Worked well, thanks to King Vidor.
When Lean left school in 1926, he was found a job as a clerk in his father's accountancy firm in the city.
And after a year, I couldn't bear it. So I went to my father and said, I'd like to go into the films. And he was very good, and he got me an introduction to an accountant at Gaumont British. I remember going into that studio at Lime Grove, now used by the BBC, and looking at cameras. And that camera had photographed Roses of Picardy, which was one of my favorite films at that time. I remember touching it and finding I was in some wonderful magic world. And I just loved it. And they took me on, and they paid me £1 a week, and I did everything. I humped cameras around, I pulled focus, I was an assistant director, I had a brief spell as wardrobe mistress, and I went into the laboratories, and I finally eased my way into the cutting rooms. These were in the silent days. And it was a world of magic.
In the late 1920s, the studio was making 6 to 8 films a year, mainly adaptations of stage plays. But Lean had entered the industry on the eve of a radical change.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Waiting for sound.
Come along, sound. We're waiting for you.
Come on, sound.
All right, Arthur, please. Okay. Is that all right, Chris? Just there? Okay, all right, please.
Charlie Sunday, 224, take 5.
Action.
I met her working in a little store. Her manner and her dress were very plain. We talked a while and
One area that immediately seized the benefits of sound was the newsreels. Stories could be told much more effectively with sound, and Lean was quick to grasp the new editing techniques required.
Cutting a newsreel, you learn speed. You've got to make decisions. There's no messing about. And I'm going to take a walk and wonder how this is going to come out. You know, there it is. You've got to cut it, and you've got to have it out in 2 hours. And I think that's terribly important. I think lots of people look on movies as some kind of dreaming job. It isn't. It's intensely practical. You have to be intensely practical, and you have to be, I think, pretty imaginative. And very often, the imaginative doesn't go with the practical. I think that's why there are few film directors.
By the late 1930s, Lean was regarded as the best film editor in Britain. He now cut feature films and was paid £60 a week, twice what other editors earned. He was often called in to rescue films that had gone wrong. Then in 1941, he got his first big break.
One day, I was asked to go and see Noel Coward, and he said, my dear, I'm going to make a film about the British Navy. And that was a film called In Which We Serve, which was highly successful. Now, Noel said, will you come and help me direct it? Because Noel had never directed a film before, and of course it's quite a bag of tricks directing a film. You have to know something about the technique. And he'd gone around asking who is a good technician. And say 3 or 4 people had said me. And that's how I became a director.
Keep it up. Stop star shell. Stop star shell. Star shell. Check, check, check.
Mystery to me. And Noel, of course, was simply wonderful at that. He was wonderful with actors. And I took over the technical thing. I decided where the camera was, what lens to use. And Noel took over the actors. Well, I said I was lucky. I was lucky because Noel became terribly easily bored. And he got bored very soon. And when he wasn't acting in one of the scenes, he wasn't there. So I handled the whole damn thing, you know. Great piece of luck.
Lean went on to make 3 more films with Noel Coward. This Happy Breed, Blithe Spirit, and the classic Brief Encounter, which won him the first Oscar nomination for any British director.
Oh, please, could you give me a glass of water? I've got something in my eye and I want to bathe it.
Would you like me to have a look?
Oh, no, don't trouble. I expect the water will do. Thank you.
Bit of coal dust, I expect.
A man I knew lost the sight of one eye through getting a bit of grit in it.
Nasty. Very nasty.
Better?
I'm afraid not. Oh.
Can I help you?
Oh, no, please, it's only something in my eye.
Try pulling your eyelid down as far as it'll go.
And then blowing your nose. Please let me look. I happen to be a doctor.
That's very kind of you.
Oh, turn around to the light, please. Now, look up. Now, look down. Keep still. That's it. There.
Oh, what a relief. It was agonizing.
Looks like a bit of grit.
It was when the express went through. Thank you very much indeed.
There we go. On must run.
I like it when you happen to be here.
Anybody could have done it.
Never mind, you did, and I'm most grateful.
There's my train. I'm Scout. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Though it was based on a Coward play, the screenplay of Brief Encounter was radically reworked by Lean. A rigorous, almost obsessive attention to the script would be one of the hallmarks of every David Lean film from now on. In charge of production on Brief Encounter was a talented young cameraman called Ronald Neame, later to become Lean's producer and a director himself.
He's completely and utterly single-minded. Once he's dedicated himself to that film, really and truly, there's nothing else in life. I'm sure that if he suddenly heard that his greatest friend was dying, he would say, well, I'm terribly sorry, but I'm working on a scene. Right from the beginning, the inception of when one decides to make the film, and I can think back, of course, to Great Expectations and pictures like that, every line of dialogue, not just dialogue, every line of description written in that script is studied and worked out before it's put down on the paper. People tend to think that scripts can be written easily in just a few weeks, but they can't. David probably takes a year on a script, because before any word goes down, before any adjective goes down to describe anything, it goes through his mind as to whether that is the right word for it. Now, that he carries forward not just through the script stage, but through everything.
Looking back on the period of your collaboration with Noel Coward, how influential do you think he was on you?
I suppose one's whole life is what has rubbed off on you from other people that one's worked with, and of course a lot's rubbed off on me from Noel. He extraordinary discipline. There was no walking round the woods waiting for inspiration. You know, he'd done his homework, he'd thought about it, and he just wrote. And I think I've learnt that a bit, that you can sit and talk and think, as it were, for too long. The best thing is to get a blank sheet of paper, pick up the pencil or put it in the typewriter, as the case may be, and get on with it.
Lean is working on one of the early scenes of A Passage to India. The district governor, Turton, and his wife are on their way back from the station. It's Lean's way of introducing us to the fictitious town of Chandrapur.
Very good, cut it. That looks very good, Mickey. The dust was almost perfect. That is the first. Look.
This one we see the
We saw the flags. Their curtains in the back, ending on pretty well their faces. The Perda women, the car going through. I think it'll look smashing. It really worked. So keep it going, keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. Zoom. Yeah, that's it. Now do it once for him. I can't operate.
Every shot that's being taken is an attempt to capture precisely what Lean saw in his mind's eye when he wrote the script.
Yeah, he's going too fast, you see. He's probably, yes, at quarter, I should think. Let's see him again. Oh, dear, oh, dear. Getting hot. I think the good things in movies are the scenes that are made up of cuts. That person doing this, that person doing that. Quick series of shots, you know? It's very carefully thought out, and I try to imagine what the final result's going to be on the screen, and I put down all those shots.
Lean started adapting E.M. Forster's book into a screenplay in 1980, 3 years before he started shooting in India. The script is now looked after by his continuity lady, Maggie Unsworth, a good friend who's worked with Lean since his first film, In Which We Serve, 44 years ago. Her job is to check that everything in the script is being shot and to note any changes.
My favourite one is The Women Are Worse. Are worse. Last car passes, disclosing a glimpse of flying scarves and picture hats. I wonder which is the best car. I wish I could bring the fella. give the shot a bit of variation.
I mean, it's just the speed of the car. This is just fly.
Very light silk, you see. That's a heavyweight thing. It takes a lot to make that kind of material fly. I know it doesn't feel very heavy, but
It's got to be further away from camera.
Yeah, okay, let's
Sorry,
see what
David.
what we've got. I mean, it's
not
a
bright
shame.
colours.
I know they aren't. What am I doing now? It's in the script and we haven't got them. Bring them out.
In the script, Lean had imagined the scarves of the women in the car flying in the wind. It isn't working out the way he wanted.
There's no wind immediately behind.
And the wind's following.
It's a vacuum. But I mean, if you had them over the sides, it might work.
Wait 1 sec. Does the front of the windscreen go up? Whoa. Pretty, they weren't all swelling up. You know, we could go on like this all day. Right, print the one before. Let's go to lunch.
Although Lean has come thousands of miles to film in India, he's decided not to shoot the sequence in a real street. To give him more control, the town of Chandrapur has been specially built, exactly as he imagined it in the script, in the grounds of a Maharaja's Balmoral-style palace in Bangalore.
David has got such a finite vision of what he wants to end up with. His sort of attention to detail has been throughout the whole process of making the film. In other words, he's really started right at the very beginning, visualizing the finished film, and it's all in the script, and everything's there. And I've never been with a director who does that before.
This shot will last 1.5 seconds in the final film. It's going to be a close-up of the car knocking over 2 cyclists.
Right, here we go.
That's lovely. Patrick, let him go on until he gets a bit bored, and then we'll get it. Patrick, he's got to lock so the wheels skid for at least 2 to 3 feet. Cut the skid on this and let's do it absolutely straight. First of all, look, get the 2 cyclists and let's see what size we're going to be. Patrick, come here a minute. All we want is the front of the car and the bikes going like that.
Okay, so you don't want the car to catch up on them or anything?
I mean, it's 3 feet. Well, he's gone bloody mad. Patrick, let him get so he can make a beeline for the gate. Maybe we have to alter. Maybe we have to come over here a bit. I don't know.
If you want somebody in there to help you, do you need somebody in there?
not necessarily.
Right? Okay. Try it once again.
A shorter period.
I'm a fool.
The problem is solved at last by moving the camera a few yards to the left.
How much pan would you need?
Well, as they go, we're going to see the car sliding by them, aren't we? Here.
Quicker.
Let's try it. Let's try it. Try it. Look, don't get discouraged. It's bloody difficult.
Absolutely.
I think it was coming straight at
Because
us.
you lined it up this way last night.
That's right,
Well,
sure.
it looked better
Did we?
somehow, yeah. Well,
Were
you
we
kind of
more
looked at
over?
it, then you changed it.
1, 2, 3, go!
Got it? That must be rather good, wasn't it? Jolly good. The script is, in fact, a blueprint. You know, I may alter it at the time, but it's a frightening job doing a picture in a way because you have hundreds of people around you, a lot of highly paid technicians, the money people practically looking at their watches all the time, And are you going to be behind schedule, etc., etc., etc.? And there are tremendous pressures. And my script is something I can lean back against.
People will be impressed by the detail in which you not only imagine the way people look and what they're looking at, but what they do, how they react. I mean, it is totally imagined through. If you read the script very, very slowly... Totally imagined through.
Yeah.
If you read the script very carefully, you'll fill it out to be about 5 or 6 times as long. I'm sure you've left a lot out, which you've also thought through. It's thought through that clearly.
Yes, I mean, I did a scene yesterday, which I don't think I could have done if I hadn't written it down. It's the introduction to this Indian character, Dr. Aziz. And we have the collector, who's the sort of miniature viceroy of the district, driving through a town. And he runs down 2 cyclists who just get out of the way in time. Hell of a lot of dust. Action! Dust clears. Go on, more. And that's Aziz. No, cut. What I think would really be good, another great dollop.
It's late. 726, take 2.
So that here, I'd like him almost a sort of silhouette. So it's something really clear. I don't care how much we go in. So that on the ground, it's pretty thick. It starts to clear, another great dollop, which will carry right through. All right?
Turn over.
Running.
It's late.
Now, doubting. Victor. In you go. Go on. Go on, boys. Go on. Cut. All right. Look, chaps, it's got to go as he still stood. OK, once more. Make up, clear him up a bit. Put some more in this. That's all right.
It's late. Turn over.
You stop, right? Right, in you go. More. No, cut it. It's going the wrong direction. Sorry. Dust. Action. Higher. That's rather good. Got it? How's that? Number, I mean.
It's late. 726, take 9.
I think it worked. But that's intercut with Aziz and his friend, the young lawyer, watching the various cars of the British officials passing on the way back from the railway station to the British part of the town, you see. And it was a remark. They look, another car passes. Remark, another car passes. I mean, I thought of this idea of dust. Do you remember in the old days, a picture of petrol advertisement? That was Shell, that was. Car. And they come in through an arch, dust, cover the characters in dust and bonk out through the other gate. And I hope when it's cut, I followed the script absolutely shot by shot. And it must have looked pretty crazy yesterday doing it, because nobody knows exactly what I was up to. But I think when it's cut, it'll look very amusing, and it'll be a hell of a good introduction to Aziz. Hope so.
That was Turton.
Turton?
McBride. When he first came out, Hamidullah said he was quite a good fellow.
But they all become exactly the same. I give any Englishman 2 years.
The women are worse.
I give them 6 months.
Cut it.
Cut it.
Movies are pictures, you see. You know, I was saying to somebody the other day, it was an actor, actually, and they said, oh, come on. I said, right, quote me some lines of dialogue that you remember from a movie. There was a long hesitation. I said, here's looking at you, kid. And then they added Clark Gable's Gone with the Wind. What is it? Frankly, I don't give a damn, something like that.
I don't give a damn.
Yeah, that's right. And I said, now, visuals, pictures. And of course, you're flooded with them. You know, anybody can provide lots of visuals. And I think that's the funny thing about the screen. That's why I like pictures. And I think people remember pictures, not dialogue.
Lean's extraordinary skill at telling stories in pictures rather than words first became apparent 40 years ago when he broke away from Noel Coward to make 2 films based on books by Charles Dickens. Oliver Twist opens with one of the most spectacular pieces of visual storytelling ever made. It's almost 5 minutes before a word is spoken. His first Dickens film had an equally gripping start.
Keep still, you little devil, or I'll cut your throat.
No, sir, no.
Tell us your name. Quick.
Pip, sir.
And now I was worried sick about Magwitch, the introduction of the convict in the graveyard. I decided that the best way, the only hope I had, was to frighten the audience, as the convict frightens the boy, and then he can almost say anything. And I remember going to the press show, I think it was, and I was sitting up high. And as the convict came up, the whole audience went back in a wave. And, you know, I knew I was halfway there.
Lean's Graveyard Shock has since been copied many times by other directors, especially in horror films. Part of the impact comes from the fact that Pip has looked round, and we assume, like him, there's nothing there but the trees.
Get up.
Lean's two classic Dickens films have all the signs of a young director exploring new techniques and relishing his craft.
Get up. There's light enough for what I've got to do.
Well, why are you looking at me like that? Oh, no! 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 Speak to me! What have I done?
You were watched tonight. Every single word you said was heard.
Oh, I've been true to you. Upon my soul, I have. Give me time.
The use of the dog during the murder of Nancy is a fantastic example of intelligence over the obvious, whereby you don't see Nancy murdered. You set the situation in which you know that she's going to be bludgeoned, and the camera then stays on the dog, and it's the dog's desperate desire to get away from what's happening, to get out of the door. And you've established that the dog is very fond of Nancy. Leads your brain races as to what could possibly be happening, because the effect on the dog is so absolutely cataclysmic. And that's real filmmaking, I think. I mean, it's quite brilliant filmmaking.
Nancy in Oliver Twist was played by David Lean's second wife, Kay Walsh. They were soon to divorce, and Lean married the woman who was to star in his next 3 films, Anne Todd. Lean was now recognized, along with Carol Reed, as one of Britain's top directors.
But director David Lean and his wife, Anne Todd, focused their interest in the newsreel camera.
I'm fascinated by that lens. It's a long-focus lens. I know a bit about newsreels because I used to work on the GB News.
But his 3 films with Anne Todd, Passionate Friends, Madeline, and The Sound Barrier, lacked the flair of the Dickens films. It was to be 6 years before he made what, again, has become an English classic. Its star was Charles Laughton. It wasn't just Laughton's acting that made his drunken moonwalk one of the many memorable scenes. The photography, lighting, music, and indeed the whole rhythm of the scene all exploited the size of Laughton's performance to the full.
Terrific man to work with. The trouble was that in Hobson's Choice, I should have held him down a bit. But he's such an entertainment that you let him go, you know. He was slightly over the top in some of it. But terrific person. I loved working with him. Very, very fond of Charlie. What a talent.
What's it for, the lady?
I am trying to take a picture of that shop.
Sometimes I think you're very peculiar.
Thanks, Cookie.
Lean's next film featured an even bigger star, Katharine Hepburn. Shot in Venice with foreign backing, it was his first international picture.
Be a good boy. Stand over there and don't move and shut up. Go ahead, now, stop. Okay.
Mamma mia.
Scusi?
Skip it.
Then there came film Summer Madness. Is there a sense in which that film was a turning point for you?
Well, in a way, I suppose it was a turning point because it was my first real foot in the water making foreign locations, doing foreign locations, and it was wonderful. I'll never forget, I've never had such a glamorous time in my life, leaving the hotel, stepping into a motorboat and being taken up the Grand Canal to the location we were shooting in. Wonderful.
Since the mid-50s, when he made Summer Madness in Venice, every film David Lean has made has been set in an exotic foreign location. Capturing the feel of such places and building it into the story has become another hallmark of his films. One of the ways he's done this in A Passage to India is by writing in a scene where his characters drive through an Indian bazaar.
So what are you going to do here tomorrow?
It's the first real glimpse we have of what the girl calls the real India. And I'm going to bring them down here with all this stuff in the foreground. It'll be much brighter than it is now. And then I shall go into close tracking shots of her taking in everything and glimpses. I'm not quite sure what I'll do. There's dyes, the saris, metal workers, and have a kind of cacophony of sounds. You know, songs passing, going, noise, shouting, horses neighing. So I give her a sort of real hurly-burly of a bazaar, so she hardly knows what's hit her.
Yeah.
Because that is India, this crowded feeling. Hope it works. I don't know yet, of course.
A Passage to India is not a big-budget film. When films can cost up to $50 million, this costs 16. Its look, however, is often much more lavish than that would suggest. In the scene where Adela and Ronnie drive through the bazaar, the stores look so exotic, they're causing a problem.
I just don't know what to look at.
No, it's very, very good.
Get on and see it with 65. Right, bring Nigel back.
So, with an even closer lens.
Right.
Yes.
I thought I had it all set. And we were going to do a shot through the bazaar, you see, quite a long shot following that carriage.
Yeah.
And having laid the track, done everything else, I looked through the camera and I suddenly realized the bazaar's so good, it's so full of color, that your mind goes off the principal action and goes on to the bazaar. It's like a documentary of the bazaar.
Yeah.
So that put me in one of my panics that I get about once every 2 weeks, when I just don't know what to do. So I changed the whole thing, and I'm doing the whole thing close, and from their point of view, so it'll be better. What we're trying to do is to get their colour.
Capturing the feel of an exotic location involves Lean in close collaboration with art director John Box. For his work on David Lean films, Box has won 2 Oscars, and it's he who's designed all the sets on A Passage to India.
Walking through my store, there was something rather interesting. There was a sort of roadway going through the market. There were awnings up, they're made out of old sacking, and they're spaced in such a way that you've got stripes, light and shade. And it seemed to be a good idea to send Mrs. Moore and Adela down a similar road. In the moving film, they'll be going, that light will play on them. Therefore, any close-up of, for instance, Adela, you'll be getting the light and shade effect, which should create a sort of something, anyhow. We had this idea of introducing the funeral by getting above these shades and shooting down and just being aware of something and the sound of a funeral. And then bring it out into the light. At that moment, Adela passes juxtaposition, a young girl alive, a corpse.
Ram, Nam. Ram, Nam. Go, Chris. Ram, Nam. Ram, Nam. Ram, Nam.
The other key technician is Eddie Fowley. He's worked on every David Lean film for the last 28 years. As property master, he's responsible for dressing the sets John Box has designed.
I've got to bring it to life and put the colour and all the things of everyday life into it, and all the movement and the animals. And so I start by going to the markets and the bazaars, the real things, and looking and see what's good, what's cheap, what's expensive, what's big, what's small.
Take it off. Take it off.
Yeah, David's eye for detail is total. Nothing goes by, and nothing appears in the film unless it's absolutely correct.
Go and do the flower shop.
We're going to light the fire yet? No, put some carrots. Where's that?
Eddie Fowley is not only Lean's general right-hand man, he's also his closest friend. Before the film was even financed, he and Lean drove all over India looking for locations. And it was Eddie Fowley who found the key location that brought them to Bangalore.
Well, when I'm going to do a location hunt, I always look, first of all, for the thing which, in my opinion, can't be built. Only by God.
We drove miles and miles all over India, and we were looking for a gigantic rock face. And we came up a road over there. It looked promising. Then we started to climb. It was terribly hot. I was terribly out of breath, as I am rather now. And we came up through that wall, and there was that great mass of rock. I thought we were going to have to go to Ceylon for it, where we did some of one of the treks on River Kwai. But this is much better.
It's here on the mountain that the key event in A Passage to India happens. Aziz, the young Indian doctor, invites Adela and Mrs. Moore on an outing which goes disastrously wrong. Aziz ends up on trial, accused of attempted rape.
You cannot imagine how you honor me. I feel that I am journeying back into my past, and that I'm a Mughal emperor.
That's how I would do it. I don't know whether it's up here.
That's bloody good.
It's Lean's ability to capture the scale and sweep of landscapes like this that has characterized all his films for the last 30 years.
Yeah. And then down we go, keeping that top right the whole time. It's a hell of a good shot. Mm. Let's give him a track, so dark rocks, going out of top right all the way down.
Okay, right.
Look, have a look. And keep on with the...
Thomas, thank you. Could you lose that? Sure.
Just, you know, with that top right all the time.
Yeah.
Right down to the tree.
Okay.
760, take one. And
Action, Mickey.
Eddie, actually, he and his wife came out for about 4 weeks, and they found this place, and then I came out later, and they took me to it. I said, Chum, it's going to be a much bigger film. I can't resist writing to the producers and telling them that it's bigger than they think it's going to be.
What did you mean by that? I mean, why did
bigger?
the sight of that make you think it would be bigger?
Size, landscape, a smell of a country. I don't mean bigness just for the sake of bigness, just the smell of India. I mean, look at this place here.
But you've built this place in the middle of the hotel
No,
ground.
but you couldn't build this in London. Look at the light. Listen to the birds. The whole thing's got an atmosphere.
So once you can see your characters in that landscape, you feel that that gives them a size, and that gives the events they pass through a size, and that defines big, does it?
There's an awful fine line between the two, because you've got to be terribly careful not to let the landscape swamp the people. And I'm always having talks with assistant directors that they say, look, shall we put 4 people walking through the back? Now, what happens if you have somebody walking through there? I'm looking at you and something crosses behind you. I'm bound just to flex. My attention just goes for 1 second. And so I try to keep it out, keep that sort of thing out. But, and if I want to show it, I should go long, show the whole damn thing and go bang in again.
Bridge on the River Kwai was the first of what have become known as David Lean's big films. Building the bridge and laying a railway track through the Ceylonese jungle was an epic task in itself. It took 8 months. It was the first of 2 films Lean was to make with the American producer Sam Spiegel. And the story of the eccentric Colonel Nicholson's obsession to build the bridge for his captors caught the world's imagination.
Would you prefer to see this battalion disintegrate in idleness? Would you have it said that our chaps can't do a proper job? Don't you realize how important it is to show these people that they can't break us in body or in spirit? Take a good look, Clifton. One day the war will be over. And I hope that the people who use this bridge in years to come will remember how it was built and who built it. Not a gang of slaves, but soldiers, British soldiers, Clifton, even in captivity.
Yes, sir.
You're a fine doctor, Clifton, but you've a lot to learn about the army.
Kwai won 7 Oscars, including those for Best Director and Best Film of 1957. It's said to have been seen by more people throughout the world than any other film. But if Lean's admirers thought Kwai was big, Lawrence of Arabia is rated by many critics to be Lean's finest film to date. It took nearly 3 years to make and was filmed in Jordan, Morocco, Spain and England.
Yeah, I love Lawrence. It was a wonderful picture to make. It's some of the greatest days of my life, somehow, living in a caravan right out there in the desert. Saw some wonderful things. Never forget it.
What appealed to you about Lawrence himself? You said fascinating character. What was it exactly about him?
Well, I'm fascinated by these nuts. They're both nuts in their way.
Nicholson.
Nicholson is certainly a nut, and so was Lawrence, in a wonderful way. But a nut, I mean, to go out there and lead a band of Arabs and have a bodyguard of the biggest thugs he could get hold of. Most extraordinary. A sort of university don on camel. Wonderful.
Living for months on end, miles from civilization, Lean exulted in the locations. Making films on the scale of Lawrence and Kwai required a breadth of vision and a strength of purpose that was similar to those the film's heroes themselves possessed. It also required vast resources and a huge production team. Many of Lawrence's most memorable moments were the result of close collaboration with art director John Box, cameraman Freddie Young, and a new writer, Robert Bolt. What qualities of his did you latch on to most firmly?
Well, I think he's a wonderful writer. Wonderful dialogue. He's got a great sense of style, Robert. And in a way, he was rather like a younger brother to me. He rather reminded me of my brother, who I admired enormously and was very intellectual where I'm not.
Was that tangy?
Yes, tangy, yes. And I think Robert and I did some quite good things together. It seemed to work.
One of the scenes in Lawrence that people remark on a lot is Omar Sharif's arrival at the well, which had a very long build-up. Was that the idea of such a long build-up based on the advice that you were given by a man you admire very much, Willie Wyler?
Willie once said to me, he said, if you're going to shock an audience, get them almost to the point of boredom before doing so. And of course, he's right. And what I did was I had this scene with him coming to this well, sitting down, whistling. And then he hears the guide get up and he looks. And then looks and he sees a dot coming towards him, you see. And it gradually develops.
I think we shot nearly 1,000 feet of film with him coming on and on and on, coming through the mirage and through the, it looked like water on the desert almost, you know, this peculiar mirage effect. And as he came through waves of mirage, closer and closer and closer, and then we got the sound of the camel's feet and the desert, and it was very, very effective.
It's a very strange thing working with David. You may not say anything, but he gets you sort of going and feeling and thinking. And not long before the camera's turn, I just had this desire to get a white line painted out, based on the fact that camel tracks, which are only that wide, they're all over the desert, because the camel's feet just go one in front of the other. So why not a white camel track going out towards that thing? In other words, it's bringing that man to this place, and this place is Lawrence, and Lawrence's life is going to be different after meeting this man.
Turks?
Petra. Who is he?
us!
He is dead.
Yes. Why?
This is my well.
In fact, I lost my nerve. I had the Omar coming out of the mirage at double the length, and it was better. And I lost my nerve and cut it quite a bit. I wish I hadn't.
I think that this is the only shot that I can think of in which a man enters the film art in such a spectacular way. I don't think it ever happened before and has ever happened since. It wasn't just the entrance into Lawrence of Arabia, but the entrance into a new career for a man who thought that he'll be the best bridge player in the world.
It was Omar Sharif who played the title role in Lean's next film.
Do the love story. Wonderful love story, I thought. And so it proved. I think that's why the public liked it so much. I mean, it was an enormous success financially. In fact, Zhivago, as far as I'm concerned, has made more money for me than all my other films put together. And I didn't do it for, as it were, for the money. I just liked the story, of course.
The three films we've been talking about, Quiet, Lawrence and Zhivago, they're different in lots of ways, but they have similarities. One of the most striking similarities is that in each case we have one or at the most two people inside a huge and very dramatic landscape which is set against their story. This obviously interests you, the interrelationship, very powerfully. Were you conscious at the time, and looking back, do you feel that you were doing something there that you thought was very important, that these were the sort of films you wanted to make?
I find it terribly hard to talk about this sort of thing because, you see, it's all subconscious. It's, those stories happen to appeal to me. Now, I don't know why they do, but they do. It's sort of like going into somebody's house, isn't it? And you see, I notice that the drawing room is rather like the sitting room or this room or that room. It, in a way, must reflect your taste. And I don't think there's anything deeper than that, really.
Zhivago required a backdrop on a scale even more epic than Lawrence. Undaunted by having to recreate Russia in Spain, Lean had Eddie Fowley, for one scene, transform an entire landscape.
It was in the summertime, near Madrid, and it wasn't a lake at all. It was just a great big flat field, and I used an awful amount of crushed white marble dust, you know. Thousands of tons of it, in fact, which we ironed out with steamrollers and dressed over the top, and then put down sheet iron, and so the horses were able to slide on that just in a more natural way, you see.
In this scene where the Cossacks charge in the street, why did you decide to do it the way we see it in the film? Can you tell us about that?
Well, it's always very difficult, isn't it, when you know you're doing a scene in which you know what the end is, and when you get a whole lines of hussars with swords about to attack a defenseless mob, you know they're going to cut them to bits. And God knows we've seen enough in the movies of people slashing with swords and people reeling back and blood all over the place, you know. I thought, well, how else can I do it? And so I set them off charging and then cut to Omar and gradually went in a little bit closer to him. And and then played the cries and the shouts and the clashing of swords over it. And I think it was much better because the audience will supply in their imagination something much better than I could do.
Whispered in my ear. He said, Omar, what you have to do, to convey, it's like if you're making love with a woman and you're about to climax and you're holding back. He said, that's the feeling. And although I understood what he meant by that, literally, I never to this day quite understood what it meant in relation to what was happening.
On the set of A Passage to India, David Lean is shooting a scene with Alec Guinness.
Stop the train, Margaret!
Guinness has starred in more of Lean's films than any other actor. Here he plays a wise old mystic called Godbole. As the train carrying Mrs. Moore pulls out of Chandrapur station, Godbole mysteriously appears to bid her farewell. The Lean-Guinness partnership is one of the most celebrated and enduring collaborations between an actor and a director in British cinema. It was, in fact, Lean who gave Guinness his first starring role in films.
All right, cut it. How was that?
There. Stop the train.
How was that?
Mr. Pip? Mr. Pocket?
Oh, dear me, I'm extremely sorry. But the fact is, I've been out on your account, for I thought, coming from the country, you might like a little fruit. And I went to Covent Garden Market to get it good.
Well, thank you. It's very nice of you. Can I take the parcels?
Don't forget him coming up those stairs. Blonde hair. Wonderful. Terribly nervous, but simply wonderful.
He guided me beautifully, and I was very self-conscious in front of the car. I still am, but acutely so, I think, then. And to laugh or anything like that, he would sometimes pretend that the camera wasn't running. I mean, but I got to know the little secret signals he gave to try and engage me in something, some sort of conversation to relax me and suddenly make me laugh in the way he wanted me to laugh.
The idea of it's being you.
Well, the idea of it's being you.
I hope you've forgiven me for having knocked you about so.
Oh, of course.
You hadn't come into your good fortune at that time, had you?
No.
I was rather on the lookout for a good fortune then.
Indeed?
If Miss Havisham had taken a liking to me, I suppose I should have been provided for. But perhaps even I should have been engaged to Estella. But I didn't care much for it. She's a tartar.
Alec knew I was going to do Oliver Twist, and he came to me one day and said, look, can I have a word? And I said, what? And he said, look, I want to be in Oliver Twist. And I said, yes, what? What part? He said, I'd like to play Fagin. I said, Alec, with all due respect, you're mad. And he said, I'll tell you what. Give me a test. So I said, all right. And he said, I ask you one thing. Don't ask me anything. Don't see me. I don't want you to see the makeup until I come on the set.
Good boy. Good boy.
This extraordinary thing came on.
Genius worker, ain't he, Ivor?
Fagin, and that was more or less as he looked in the final film.
You'd like to make pocket handkerchiefs as easily as the Artful Dodger, wouldn't you, my dear?
Yes, if you teach me, sir.
We will, my dear, we will. To work. Terry, Fred.
We worked very well and happily on it. And there's one shot in the film which is of David himself and not of me. Because I had frightful flu one day and simply couldn't carry on. And David donned the whole stuff, and there's a shot of Fagin walking down a street alone, and that's David. And I know it's David, and I thought he got the walk wrong, but he made a jolly good stab at getting it right.
With the shots involving Peggy Ashcroft finished, Lean is now concentrating on Guinness. He wants Godberly's sudden appearance to have a startling and haunting effect.
Yeah, fine. Yes, I did it.
Yeah, sure. Come and look at this.
Can we have the stand-in for Sir Alec, please?
Zoom in a bit, will you?
That's all we've got, sir.
That's it. I think that's probably bloody good. Look, Alec, come and look at this. I think closer's rather better. It's rather strange, isn't it? This is just her point of view through the fog. Then,
I think that's
Alec,
frank.
this,
Yeah.
her struggling with the window, down it comes, she looks.
Yeah.
Close shot.
Do I look camera left or right? Not that you would know.
I think you pretty well look at the camera. You do it at the camera, I think. And look, you can't possibly tell if it'd be very close. I think that looks rather good, doesn't
Yes,
it?
it looks marvelous.
Good.
It's not a problem, but I've just got to make up my mind.
Yeah. It's where you
when we
step
went
out.
Up the track, this shot, as far as I can make out, was halfway along that wall.
Yeah, I don't think you should put your hands up until you hit the white. This is all one shot. It's where we cut to you that's the query. Half of me says it might be jolly good to cut to you when we're absolutely opposite. And as you come into the white, you step forward and up with your hands.
But I'm not into the white until you're slightly past the door.
That's right, of course not. I think that might look bloody
Frank,
good.
come out a bit to the...
I mean, his genius lies not in what he can say to an actor, but the genius lies is when he's stuck with an actor or doesn't know how to express himself except visually and says, as he's often done to me, oh, come and look through the camera. And you go and look through the camera and you get it. And that happened in Kwai quite a bit. And in subsequent things, you see his sort of vision. There was a scene of me kind of coming out of the little hot oven hut thing, which I didn't realize. I mean, one could see, of course, what everyone else sees. But I didn't realize quite what a sweep it had and how extravagantly I could go in the way I walked in a cramped and doubled up way. I might have kind of brought that down into something very small.
Guinness won an Oscar for his performance as Nicholson in Kwai, but he and Lean fell out badly over how the part should be played.
I couldn't totally believe in the man. I thought it was a jolly good part, no question of that. But not a man I could 100% sympathize with, but from the war years, I knew their naval equivalents, and I was quite happy to try and just turn something a little bit, you know, a bit thick between the ears and a bit blunted. And, I mean, a perfectly nice man, but obviously insane.
Of course, it's normally the duty of a captured soldier to attempt escape. But my men and I are involved in a curious legal point of which you are unaware. In Singapore, we were ordered to surrender by command headquarters. Ordered, mind you. Therefore, in our case, escape might well be an infraction of military law. Interesting?
Yes, interesting point. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't quite follow you. You mean you intend to uphold the letter of the law, no matter what it costs?
Without law, Commander, there is no civilization.
That's just my point. Here, there is no civilization.
Then we have the opportunity to introduce it. I suggest we drop the subject of escape. Is there anything else? No, I think we're all clear on the program. I want everything to go off without a hitch, starting first thing tomorrow morning. And remember this, our men must always feel they are still commanded by us and not by the Japanese. So long as they have that idea to cling to, they'll be soldiers and not slaves. Are you with me there, Commander?
Well, I hope they can remain soldiers, Colonel. As for me, I'm just a slave. A living slave.
Queer bird. Even for an American. He's been in isolation too long, poor chap. Cut off from his unit.
Did you find it difficult at times working with Guinness on Kwai, for example?
Yes.
Was the differences over interpreting the part?
Yes.
What were they?
Well, Alec came out to Colombo. I mean, we shot the whole film in Ceylon. And he started talking about it in a certain way, and we found that we saw the part in two ways, and I made a fatal mistake. He said, "Well, tell me about this chap." And I said, "Well, Alec, if he came to dinner with us now, I think we'd both find him a bit of a bore." And a terrible look came over his face, and he said, "You're asking me to play a bore?" Well, that was all resolved, of course. But it was, we had difficulties along that line, I suppose. He saw it in a different way to begin with. I hope he liked the finished film.
I'm not aware that we had different ideas as to how it should be played. I was a little bit thrown when he greeted me at Colombo Airport by saying that he was hoping that Charles Lawton was going to play it, but he'd been thrown me. So he must have had very different ideas, but I let that one pass. And then halfway through the film, after Bill Holden had, I mean, I'd done more than half my part before Bill turned up. And David was over the moon about Bill's acting ability and personality and this, that, and the other, and said, "We've got to alter this character because otherwise it's foolish." Well, I said, "You know, it's too late to alter anything." I think I wanted a bit more send-up humor, possibly, and David took everything very, very seriously.
The high point of the disagreement between Guinness and Lean came over the shooting of one of the film's most memorable scenes, where Nicholson, on the finished bridge, reflects on his life. Lean had Guinness do it again and again.
David came home from the bridge, tears rolling down his cheeks. He was really infuriated and frustrated because he couldn't convince Alec that that he was destroying the picture. And he was so frustrated that he literally shed tears. His face was all wet with tears. And I kind of mediated between the two of them and referred David's instructions to Alec and Alec's reaction to David for a good hour until they started communicating directly with each other.
Beautiful. Yes, beautiful. A first-rate job. I had no idea it would turn out so well.
Yes. A beautiful creation.
I've been thinking. Tomorrow it will be 28 years to the day that I've been in the service. 28 years in peace and war. I don't suppose I've been at home more than 10 months in all that time. Still, it's been a good life. I love India. I wouldn't have had it any other way. But there are times when suddenly you realize you're nearer the end than the beginning. And you wonder, you ask yourself, what the sum total of your life represents. What difference your being there at any time made to anything. Or if it made any difference at all, really. Particularly in comparison with other men's careers. I don't know whether that kind of thinking is very healthy, but I must admit I've had some thoughts on those lines from time to time. But tonight, last. I must be off.
First of all, he has enormous authority, as you must know. He can't disguise his feelings for long, which is a good thing, because you get that worried look, and it begins to worry you, and you know there's something wrong, you know. Oh, no, his strength really lies in his imagination. It may be a different imagination from some of ours, or different from mine, but it's one you respect, and it's always slightly unexpected. I mean, it's one you haven't quite catered for. It's on a rather larger scale than mine. I mean, mine might be a little bit more detailed. And I think trying to impart his vision of something to various actors may be very difficult at times. And maybe actors don't always quite run along with it and think that he's gone over the top or is really... but nevertheless, it is a stimulating vision that he has.
You don't dislike actors, but you generally have a cool attitude to them, do you?
Yes, I would say, I mean, I think on the whole, I think it's rather different with some of the modern actors, the younger ones, but on the whole, I'm not sure that actors like me very much. I think they'd say I was rather tough.
You think they dislike you because you're tough?
Yes, probably. I'm one-track mind. When the script's finished, it's in my head, and there are the actors, and I've got to try to make them measure up to the imagination I had of their part. I've got a negative in my head, and I'm trying to make the positive become.
Okay, David?
Yes.
Right, Nick,
now,
just have
ask Alec if he's ready.
If he's ready, we're just going to do the same thing as before, and David will give a cue.
I'll just say go,
which
means that he raises his hands after that.
Despite similar disagreements on Doctor Zhivago, and even on A Passage to India, Guinness and Lean continue to work with each other. Their mutual affection and respect for each other's work remains unshakable.
Terry, stay out for a minute, please.
Mighty good. Go.
Go!
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great.
Jolly
Stop
good,
it there.
Alec. That's it. That's going to be it.
What do you want, Nick?
That does work, doesn't it? Look good.
Extremely.
How do you feel about the fog filter? Too strong or
No,
right?
It gives it a bit of...
Good,
There's-
fine.
I'll tell you on the way.
Let's have a go.
It's different.
Let's have a go next time.
Now, start the train, please. Turn over. Mark it. Is he clear? Yes.
No, I think he's in love with the look. He must be. And after all, you know, that is part of the thing of being a film director, isn't it? I mean, every shot he wants to be a glorious picture.
Go. Clever old bugger.
Right, let's cut.
Very good.
Stop the train.
Tell him very good.
Nick, very, very good. Worked very, very well.
Just tell Alec he must come out 2 foot to his left.
Here we go. Turn over.
Start.
Mark it.
Start the bloody train.
Start the train.
Get ready. Go. Cut it. That's it.
That's very good, Marcus. Very good. Hold it there.
Cut the speed by half.
What?
Cut the speed by half.
Yes, I bet
right,
you're
half the
right.
speed, but get up
And
quick.
you see, I tell you what, Bernie. It goes. Now, wait a minute. Ronnie turns and goes away. Now, she sets quite a time. Train getting faster, 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 faster. Perhaps music, funny note coming up. Looks, cut.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Do you see? So we could. I don't think you'll sort of connect the speeds.
Yeah.
Then after, when we cut away, we got back to her, she's fighting with the window, down it goes.
Yeah.
She looks, cut closer.
Goodbye.
Lean's about to shoot one of the most memorable scenes in E.M. Forster's novel. It's where East meets West. Dr. Aziz comes to the home of the pro-Indian schoolmaster, Fielding. It's an intimate and subtle scene. We wanted to film Lean working closely with Victor Banerjee, an actor scarcely known to Western audiences.
Victor, how fast can you go?
In the past, when Lean has introduced actors like this into his films, they've often become huge stars. Peter O'Toole, Omar Sharif, and of course Alec Guinness. Lean has never allowed the making of a sensitive scene like this to be filmed. Nevertheless, he and the actors agreed to let us in from the very first rehearsal.
Mr. Fielding?
The day before shooting began, Victor Banerjee and James Fox read through the scene together for the very first time.
Expect a guest. Knock, knock, knock. Mr. Fielding?
You're doing the second one and then
Yeah,
the
that's
third?
right. I now cautiously go in. living area, beautiful, some luxury, stops in the middle of the room, hearing splashing, he sees so-and-so. Voiceover. Mr. Fielding?
Oh, hello, is that Dr. Aziz?
Yes, I'm afraid I am early.
Fielding, voiceover. Not on camera. That's fine. I won't be a jiffy. Please make yourself at home.
Yeah, really, Mr. Fielding. It's very good of you. I thought I'd say that after I sit down. Sits in an armchair, crosses legs. Attention almost immediately after he sits down is caught by the picture. Camera follows him as he goes over the set, crowded bookshelves. Da-dum. And suddenly we hear Fielding, half singing, half humming. And this pleases Aziz, who's heard stories about Englishmen singing in their balcony. He looks out and he says, "Hey, Mr. Fielding!"
I've got to sort of be cheerfully, happy, good mood here. Because it makes you feel at home if you hear someone singing in the bathroom. And you feel quite comfy.
No, because that's how I've always imagined Englishmen. Yeah, the guys who sing in their shower, yeah, sing in the bath, yeah. And you've gone right into it. Where did I stick that feeling in?
Victor, what use is this read-through as far as you two are concerned for yourselves?
Well, it's the first time we've actually heard the scene. I mean, we've read the scene on our own, and we've never. I mean, what we just did can never be the final thing, because we've. When we read through it the first time, we knew what we were reading wrong. Now we know what sounds wrong, and I think we're going to have to do a lot of homework in our bedroom at night and try and work things out.
So what do you expect to happen to the way you think about the part when David Lean moves in to make this scene tomorrow? He will acknowledge what we've done, and he will know precisely what we've done and what we haven't done. So it's good to be pretty well prepared with him, because he sort of cuts through all the rubbish. And if you can bring something, he kind of acknowledges it, and otherwise he kind of just, as you say, he imposes it. So it's very good to be, at least if you can, half a step ahead. That's about all you'll ever get, though.
I was having a problem with these words, take mine. Take mine. If there's anyone, I mean, that knows how to say them, it's David. In fact, David's typed every one of these lines himself. And I've been stuck with lines before. And I've gone to him, and he's set them, and he has the ability to say incredibly bad lines and make them sound good. And then you realize it's not really as bad as you read them to be, and they are sayable, speakable. So I'm sure a lot of this is going to be much easier when he's said it to me once. I pretend like I know it, but I depend a hell of a lot on him. Very good of you.
That's right. Really sit down. Very good. Good, Victor. That's good, isn't it? Works. Right.
When I started talking about casting, I said to them, what we need is a kind of young Charlie Chaplin. Somebody who gets buffeted by fate. That's Aziz. You know, it's all over the place. And he's very, very funny in the book.
Hope we're not getting too bloody long. All right, that. Now.
Mr. Fielding?
Try again, Victor. Try the bat. No interest in the Indian stuff. That's right, that. Yeah, that's good. Good. And then, well, I think I'll sit there. And hear the singing there, yeah.
You don't want that?
Yeah, sure. Now.
Mr. Fielding? I've long been wanting to meet you. I've heard many times about your kind heart and your sociability. And I've seen you in the bazaar. I say, Mr. Fielding, before you come out, guess what I look like? Really good. It was a very mechanical sort of thing. There were several things I had to do. There were several lines that I had to say, and cover it and go from point A to B to C to D to E, turn at E, sit at F, and move to picture G. You know, I mean, all that in one. And his script had said, you say these lines and then you move. which is the way I was playing it at the beginning. And he saw a hole in the scene, and he felt, you know, neither of us could really put our finger on what was wrong.
What would happen, I wonder, if you sat down? That. Then the books. Mr. Fielding, I've heard your kind heart and sociability. Oh, really? Some track, singing. That sounds nice. And then, over, and what would that... Maggie, let's have a look, love. Put that here. What? Look, Victor, come and have a look.
And we tried it. And sure enough, I mean, from there, we went on and on and on until he eventually contributed a great deal more.
I think when I start on a film, I certainly know the parts better than the actors. So I can certainly talk to them. I can tell them what my view of the part was, and if they go away from it, I tell them why I think it's wrong.
I have long been wanting to meet you. I have heard many times about your kind heart and sociability. My dear fellow. And I have seen you in the bazaar.
It's kind of tickling a talent. Don't know how I do it. It'd be quite different from actor to actor.
Now transfer. That's right. Good. I think that's going to work. Now look, Victor. Yes. There's a more intimate way of doing this business.
First bit.
Sociability.
Yes.
It's a little bit
It's all
claiming.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Mr. Fielding. Yes. I have heard many times about your...
That's it.
I have heard
That's
many times
it.
about your... What? I have long been wanting to meet you.
And you mean it?
Yes, I have long been wanting to meet you. I have heard many times about your kind heart and your sociability.
Don't run it into one. I've heard many times about your kind heart. To us Indians, you're really saying.
Yes.
Kind heart and sociability.
And I've seen you in the bazaar.
And then yeah, sure. Right, try again, Victor. Actors loathe being given intonations. And I often do, because I obviously hear the lines before they have even read them. And I find it very difficult not to interrupt an actor. Don't you say also?
Because I timed it wrong, that's why I shouted it.
Right.
Okay, that's again.
Mr. Fielding, I'm going to make a confession to you. Okay. Mr. Fielding? Okay. Right.
Mr. Fielding? Yes. I've long been wanting to meet you.
Good.
I've heard many times about your kind heart.
That's it.
And your sociability. And I have seen you in the bazaar.
And another disclosure.
And I've seen you in the bazaar.
Correct. Good. Okay, let's lay tracks and all the rest of it. Fine. Very good, Victor. That's going to be fine.
Okay. You know, you've been watching the first day of a brand new sequence. It comes right at the beginning of the film, and it's the meeting of Aziz and Fielding, one of the two principal characters. Now, we've already shot 2/3 of the film, and here we are going right back to the beginning. It probably doesn't look it, but everybody's as nervous as a cat, especially the actors. I mean, old Aziz here, Victor Banerjee, he looks quite calm. I said, "Are you all right this morning?" He said, "No, I'm terribly nervous." And I haven't known a good actor yet whose palms aren't sweating on the first day of a new sequence. Always happens. Only the jerks are confident.
Well, I mean, that's... yes, it's a take mine, take mine. Now, I tried that a million times. I've tried that at night, early in the morning. I've tried it over and over and over again, and I've never got it right. The odd occasion under a shower or, you know, jogging in the morning, I get it right, but it never comes back to me again. And I put it out of my mind, and I went through with the take.
I say, Mr. Fielding. Yes? Before you come out, guess what I look like?
You're about 5 feet 10 inches tall.
Jolly good.
I can see that much through the glass. Glass?
Anything wrong?
Just broken my back collar.
Take mine. Take mine.
Have you a spare one?
Yes. Just 1 minute.
Not if you're wearing it.
Got it? I don't know what it is, something, I like all of it, except take mine.
Yeah.
Take mine. It's,
If I could say one, it'd be a little easier.
What?
If I could say it once.
That might be it.
Yes, it would help.
I'd love to see you hesitate a minute, you know, get the idea. Blast! What is it?
Yeah.
Take mine. I suppose I can get it out, something like that.
Yeah. But,
Yeah,
great.
I better get out of the light. Get that in your head, you know.
Oh, take mine.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, good. And don't forget that quick look down. You did a jolly good, 5 foot 9 inches tall. Oh, okay.
The first take was absolutely all right, but for that line. He said, I don't like that. What's wrong? So I told him, I said, I can say it once, but I can't say it twice. So would you mind if I... You see, you've got to be very, very careful. He will not allow you to either omit or even add a single word. But he agreed. He said, yeah, say, take mine. So that solved that.
Anything wrong?
I just broken my back collar stud.
Oh. Take mine. Yes. 1 minute.
Not if you're wearing it.
No. Here in my pocket.
Nobody carries a spare stud in his pocket.
Cut it.
I always, in case of...
Cut it. Hold that position. Is it easy to go into complete blackout, is he?
That's where he ended up anyway.
Oh, yes, that's all right. Good.
Picture and...
That's good, fine. Better do one more in case of some sort of cock-up. Right. One more. Maggie, what's the line? What's his line before?
I can see that much through the glass. Blast.
And
Anything
then,
wrong?
and before that?
It's jolly good. You're about 5 feet 9
Jolly
inches
good.
tall.
Jolly good. We go from jolly good, James.
He's very impressed by the mechanical. He gives you things that impress him most about an actor are do it, photograph it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. So he's tremendously impressed by the technical aspect of acting, not the spontaneous aspect, not the internal aspect of acting. He's very impressed, I think, by the external aspect of acting. But he, you know, obviously, because he's so intelligent, he has an understanding of what is true. I'll give you that as well. But he's not frightfully interested in the process.
Do that again for me, will you? Big, just don't take the stud out. Mine it all. James, just go back.
Here it is.
Many thanks. How'd you do? Come and
How'd you do that? Here it is. Just do it. I always, in case of emergency. Maggie, I think we're going to have to let him go out a picture.
Yes.
And cut James coming out of the door. Do you see?
Yeah. I always, in case of emergency. Here it is.
Many thanks.
Can I do that again? Let me look through the camera. Here it is, like that.
Come up here, it's easier.
Is it? Right. Right, focus. Right. Right-ho.
Nobody carries a spare stud.
Nobody carries a spare stud in their pocket.
I always, in case of emergency. Here it is.
I can't operate in low gear.
How'd you do? Come and sit down while I finish dressing. You don't mind the unconventionality.
Not at all.
Just do I always in case
Here it is.
I always, in case of emergency.
Nobody.
Here it is.
Many thanks.
Ernie,
You.
do that once more.
I think I'll come a little bit sooner at you. That's what we feel.
Sure,
I always
we've
in
got
case
to
of
do
emergency.
this. Come here.
Here it is.
Do the wide angle. Do the wide angle, and then shove on the 40, just before his retreat. Yeah, just do that once more, will you?
Yeah. It's a hunch that I've got, and I just know that there's a certain time when he's interested in the acting, and that's at the moment that he's giving his fullest attention to the acting. A lot of time he's interested in the purely technical, and of course when the take is on, he's watching a lot of different things. And I don't know how his mind works, but I have that feeling, and it's obvious that he is looking for selected moments. He's looking just for very, very few moments. And people probably told you that sometimes he even walks in front of the camera before the scene ends, because he knows that he's got it, you know. And actors might be going on, doing their stuff, and David will be walking in the frame.
767, take one.
Lean is ready to shoot Victor Bannage's entrance. He's aware, however, that the light is fading fast.
Victor. Mr. Fielding. Mr. Fielding?
James, a bit more definite movement for turning off the shower. Not very good. I'll have to give it to you. I'll go right now.
It'll be about 3...
Victor, sorry, James, just take the showering position, will you? That's right. Now, come forward a bit. Now bend backwards and do it. Good. Good. That's it. And then the movement of turning it off. Right. And then give it a later cue
As he stops at the door.
Just before he stops in the door. He walks forward.
After it. 767, take two.
Background action, Nick.
Victor? Cut it, I'm sorry. Can those boys be a bit thicker on the ground?
Yeah?
At the back there. They look very good if there's a little group walking by. About...
Cut there.
Just before as I say Victor, they should move.
Nick, can you bring this up position? Take that large group and we'll come down the steps. Right, quickly, Nick. Get them to run to their first positions. Ready? Right, here we go.
767, take four.
And background action.
Victor?
Mr. Fielding. Mr. Fielding.
Have you cut it?
Yes, what?
You've just tripped over the carpet.
I thought it was rather good.
Sorry.
Start again.
Number one, please.
Remember, as you put something over.
Right, let's go.
Can I move the Marley 6 inches that way, Roy?
Yes. How's that? Victor, just see you on your stopping mark, will you a minute? See if the Marley's
Try
right.
to get the sun to hit.
I know. That's all. That's fine.
Yeah, that's good. Right, let's go. Stand by.
Check the reflector, Billy.
Sorry, Ernie.
No, check.
Right, Billy,
Anyone on?
Come on. Lights going, lights going. Come on, stop talking. What?
We're going to run that right to the end, aren't we?
Don't worry about it too much.
Here we go. Stand by. All set? Right. Yes. And. Turn over.
Mark it.
767, take 5.
Do the water again.
Do the water again, Ajit.
It's so lovely when that water's going.
Clear out, please.
Let's go.
Turn over.
Victor.
Mr. Fielding. Mr. Fielding?
Hello? Is that Dr. Aziz?
Yes. I'm afraid I am early.
That's fine. I won't be a jiffy. Please make yourself at home.
Yes, really, Mr. Fielding?
Cut it. That's good.
Cut that.
Did Aziz cover Fielding?
No.
Good. Good, good. Well, that's it, I think.
Yes.
Anybody miserable?
Right, just a quick wild track. Keep
Ernie,
clear of
Ernie,
people
are
who
you
get still as well.
unhappy or not? What wild track, for Christ's sake? Come on, then. Get on with it, quick.
Mr. Fielding? Mr. Fielding?
Oh, hello. Is that Dr. Aziz?
Yes. I'm afraid I'm early.
That's fine. I won't be a jiffy. Please make yourself at home.
May I really, Mr. Fielding? It's very good of you. Mr. Fielding?
Yes?
I have long been wanting to meet you. I have heard many times about your kind heart and your sociability.
My dear fellow.
And I have seen you in the bazaar.
Ah.
The sun whose rays are all ablaze with ever-living glory doth not deny his majesty, he scorns to tell us no.
I say, Mr. Fielding?
Yes?
Before you come out, guess what I look like.
Well, let's see. You're about 5'9" tall.
Jolly good.
Well, I can see that much through the glass.
Blast. Anything wrong?
I've just broken my back collar stud.
Oh. Take mine.
Have you a spare one?
Yes. Yes, 1 minute.
Not if you're wearing it.
No, no, here in my pocket.
But nobody carries a spare stud in his pocket.
I always, in case of emergency. Here it is.
Many thanks. Oh, and how do you do?
The shooting of A Passage to India is now complete. David Lean is at Pinewood Studios, doing what he likes best, editing it all together. Many people believe that it's his skill as an editor, learned some 50 years ago, that makes him such a great director.
Let's see the falling off the bike. In this film, we've taken about 1,400 separate shots. And it's like putting a giant jigsaw together. And it's this fitting of the jigsaw together that fascinates me as far as the film's concerned. This sequence that I'm doing at the moment, some people, the collector, who was the sort of boss of the district in those days, leaves the railway station and he enters the bazaar section of the town. They see a couple of bicycles in front of them. They nearly crash into them, but the bicyclist falls off, picks himself up, and he's the hero. Now, I could do that all in a long shot. I think it'd be pretty boring. Now, I've taken a series of shots, about 8, I should think. Here we see, you'll see. Now, there's 2 people in the back of the car. Couple waving. Then there's 2 people on the bike. Cut back to the couple. She clutches the man, says, "Look out." Bike swerve. She screams, and the bike falls over, you see. Now, and this is running it at normal speed. Looks quite different, you see. Look. And there's Aziz. Now, I think that's much more interesting than showing it in one single long shot. In fact, I know it is. But it appears on the screen as if it is one shot. It isn't. It's about 6 shots, cut very fast, one after the other, and sound effects binding them all up. And if you know your stuff about cutting, it really does look like one shot. You don't say, oh, there's the man watching, there's the man on the cyclist, there's that. At speed, it looks like one continuous piece of action. The number of times I've come out of the cinema where there's been a rather well-cut sequence, and I've heard people say that was very good photography. It's to hell with the photographer, it's the cutter.
Lean did amazing visual and audio transitions in all of his movies. There's a wonderful transition which is very, very subtle. It doesn't mean very much, and it's not symbolic, and you can't really analyze it, except it smooths over the cut. It's what an editor like Lean would do to make a cut less abrupt. Sometimes an abrupt cut is very important because there's shock value there. Other times you want a smooth transition. I remember a scene in Zhivago in the lab when young Doctor Zhivago is learning from his teacher, and the teacher has a smear glass, and he tosses the smear glass into a cylinder, into a glass cylinder, and it makes a high-pitched clinging sound. And there's a sudden cut and a wonderful low clanging sound, which is the couplings on a Moscow trolley car moving away on rails. I just recall that transition as being rather amazing. No real reason for it, except it suddenly brought you from the lab into the streets of Moscow.
Life. He wants to see life. Well, you'll find that pretty creatures do ugly things to people.
And there's another marvelous transition in Kwai, where the marvelous British stage actor James Donald looks up at the sun, and he says, "Am I mad, or are we all going mad, or is it the sun?" And he looks up into the sun, and Lean cuts to a magnificent point of view of the round yellow orb, and William Holden steps into the shot of the sun, And certainly he's 150 miles away, dying of thirst in the middle of the jungle, with his little canteen being drugged behind him.
Are they both mad? Or am I going mad? Or is it the sun?
And little transitions like that, which I think are so important, the transition, which is a marvelous, rather abrupt transition, where Peter O'Toole takes the match in Lawrence, and anxious to get into the desert and commenting, "This will be fun," he blows on the match, and suddenly he blows out the match and in the sun rising over the Sahara. Transitions like this in a movie shows that the movie is thought out deeply. Somebody knew what he was doing. Somebody kept the story moving along.
Passage to India has now been edited, and Lean is working on the music with composer Maurice Jarre. Jarre's done the music for all his films since Lawrence, including, of course, Lara's theme in Doctor Zhivago.
Maybe we should lose the music at one point.
Yeah, you know, I think I like that for the beginning. Don't be frightened about making it a little romantic. When she's going through that grass, it isn't a girl going on a nice country bicycle ride. There's something in the air that she doesn't know. So I think it's rather good to start a little bit, same thing, touch of romantic though. And I think, and personally, I would lose it when you see the camera go like that
Tracking.
and disclose that track.
On the beginning, maybe we should have something less fast. You mean like...
Lean hasn't in fact worked with Jarre like this for 14 years, for it's been that long since he directed a film.
Nice, Rose.
Well, you're back then?
Yes, I'm back, and
Though the public liked Ryan's Daughter, the critics hated it, and their reaction had a devastating effect on Lean's life.
It was my fault, really. I made a fatal mistake. I know what it is now. When the love affair started, and the Sarah character and the soldier had a love affair, I told Fred, I said, make it as romantic as possible. And we did. I mean, it chose the locations, bluebell woods, clouds on hills, and because I wanted to give the impression of somebody being madly and hopelessly in love, if you like to put it that way, or sexually attracted in this heady atmosphere. And we did it very, very romantically. The fault that I made was I didn't, as it were, tell the audience that that's what I was doing. And the critics all thought I was being a wildly romantic filmmaker. I should have had the priest or somebody saying, Rosie, you're seeing everything through rose-colored glasses. And follow it with a scene that, and they've got it, and it'd have been perfectly all right. But that's, I think, why the critics attacked Brown's Daughter.
He suddenly made a movie which, at least in America, was a little behind the times, because his movie came out in the early 70s when we were very much into Woodstock and Easy Rider, and low-budget movies were coming out, and there was a whole new wave of independent filmmaking in the States, and suddenly this war horse of a classic movie comes out, which is very much like an old romantic novel, in a way almost like a Harlequin novel. And the critics there just felt it was out of step with the drummer that was beating away in the early 70s in the States. I really don't feel that way. I think there's some very strong things in the movie, but it's not my favorite David Lean picture, Ryan's Daughter. I think he was knocked unfairly.
An overall feeling of the critics, which came out in a lot of them, was that it was a small story, a modest story that had been, using a cliche, pumped up too much. What would you say to that?
They may well be true, but they don't have to hammer me for it. At worst, I made a mistake. And, you know, it ran at the Empire for over a year. Not bad.
As I remember, there was a particular savaging of Ryan's Daughter and yourself at the old Gonquin Hotel in New York.
Oh, yes, there was. There's a kind of, I'm not quite sure what they call themselves, but it's a critics circle. And they have weekly or monthly sort of buffets. I sensed trouble from the moment I sat down, and Richard Chickle started off by saying, Mr. Lean, could you please explain to us how the man who directed Brief Encounter could produce this, and I've forgotten what word he used, but it meant rubbish, disgusting material, etc., etc., etc. And it carried on from there. And they're very, you know, they're very good with their tongues, and I was there for about 2 hours. And Pauline Kael's is pretty sharp-tongued, and they just took me to bits. And in the end, I remember saying, I don't think you ladies and gentlemen will be satisfied until I do a film in 16mm in black and white. And Pauline Kael said, no, you can have color. And that was the end of it. Horrible. It really quite had an awful effect on me for several years. In fact, I didn't want to do a film again.
Did that specific evening have such an effect that literally for several years that was one of the factors, because you hadn't made another film for about 14 years, but that was one of the factors preventing you making another film?
Oh, certainly.
if you get, as I had, on Zhivago and on Ryan's daughter particularly, the sort of notices I had, you begin to think that maybe they're right. And I thought, why on earth am I making films? I don't have to. And I didn't for a bit. It shakes one's confidence, you know, terribly. It's, I find it very difficult directing movies. Oh, and one's awfully easily shaken, you know.
On December the 13th, 1984, A Passage to India had its premiere in Hollywood. It was also being shown in New York, but Lean, by now Sir David Lean, refused to go to New York because of his traumatic experience with the critics there in 1970. The reaction to his new film has been unanimous. The critics have hailed it as a masterpiece.
I think your film is terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Time magazine, whose critic Richard Schickel chaired the meeting in which Lean was savaged in 1970, made the film their cover story, calling it superb. David Lean's return to the screen after 14 years was, they said, a daring triumph.
You know, there's just a wonderful moment that I think in Doctor Zhivago that sums up my feelings about David Lean. And at the end of Zhivago, Rita Tushingham, Laura's daughter, Yuri's daughter, is walking away, and the balalaika slips over her shoulder, and Alec Guinness turns to her and he stops her and he says, "Do you play?" And her husband says, "Like an angel." And he said, "Somebody taught you?" And he says, "No one taught her." And then Guinness sort of leans back and, with the confidence of David Lean, says, "Ah, then it's a gift."
Tonya, can you play the balalaika?
Can she play? She's an artist.
An artist? Who taught you?
No one taught her.
Ah, then it's a gift.
Movies have been my life. I love being behind a camera. I love putting images up on a screen. I get a tremendous kick of seeing a sequence cut. I'm in the middle of it now, putting music to a film, getting the dialogue, balance right. I find it immensely exciting. It's been my life.